So I put together this short presentation about nuclear energy and the pros and the cons. Nuclear energy is a form of energy created by nuclear fission that's used to generate electricity. Nuclear power plants use uranium as fuel, and they take an atom and split it apart in a process called fission. This releases a large amount of heat, and the heat is used to generate steam. And as you can see here, the steam is cooled by a water source, and the heat is connected to a generator, which is connected to a transformer, which is connected to power. Benefits: nuclear power plants have very high energy output for the small amount of fuel they use. Nuclear power plants is a low carbon energy source and does not produce very many greenhouse gas emissions. Nuclear power is very reliable and even works during extreme weather situations. Comparing to other forms of clean energy, nuclear energy is way more reliable because hydropower relies on availability of water, wind relies on the weather, and solar relies on the weather, and it also does not work during the night. So this chart shows the amount of GO2s produced on average by each form of energy. Nuclear energy is way better than fossil fuels. As you can see, nuclear is down here with 12, the fossil fuels are up here in the hundreds. Fossil fuels are non-renewable, produce a ton of greenhouse gas emissions, and are rapidly becoming more expensive as reserves deplete. And the cons of nuclear energy: nuclear waste is very radioactive and can remain dangerous for tens of thousands of years. The process of mining uranium is very harmful to the environment. Limited amount of uranium makes nuclear energy very expensive. Logistically, a nuclear power plant is very expensive and complicated to build. The cost is immense to both construct, keep running, and to take down, and nuclear power plants are often targets in attacks. The cons: nuclear energy is much less sustainable than other forms of energy. Hydropower uses water, which is way more abundant than uranium is. Solar uses the sun, and wind energy uses wind, which is also a renewable source. Examples of tragedies that have happened because of nuclear energy: Chernobyl disaster, probably the most famous in history, happened in Ukraine, and the reactor number 4 exploded due to a poorly designed experiment. Long-term impacts of the disaster have been estimated to cause up to 4,000 deaths due to cancer and other radiation-related illnesses. Other examples: the Fukushima disaster in 2011. It was caused by a 9.0 magnitude earthquake that hit Japan. Nuclear energy is very reliable, it can work during harsh weather, and it has next to no greenhouse gas emissions. It also uses a very small amount of fuel compared to its energy output. Cons is that it utilizes uranium, which is non-renewable. It's very expensive to build and maintain, and it's a massive risk for anyone living around one. In my personal opinion, I think nuclear energy falls in the middle ground. I think it's great for the environment, but the risk of a nuclear meltdown is an absolute tragedy. And if other sources like wind or solar became much more prevalent, I would prefer using those. And the end.